I think, though, her point, which I think is true, is that I obviously think that all of these deeper things are at work, but I do think that in people's day-to-day lives, you also have to meet them where they are. And there's a big opening for a lot of this reactionary stuff because people like Jordan Peterson do meet people where they are in terms of their actual, dealing with these, day-to-day things.
Well, it's not just that Jordan, make no mistake here. Jordan Peterson not just meeting them where they are.
Well, no,
he is leading them to a place that is super easy.
Agreed 100%. I've said that. I agree.
In the same way that Rush Limbaugh meets people where they are. You have some anxiety. There are things that you are ignorant about that you don't know about. You haven't met a gay person. You haven't met a transgender person. You haven't met someone from a foreign country. All of that anxiety you're feeling about those other people, that they're different, I'm going to validate that anxiety. I'm going to tell you that they are less than you. I'm going to tell you that, in fact, any self-doubt you have about that, I'm going to tell you, release it, because you are right to be afraid of them because they're coming to get you. I mean, that is what Rush Limbaugh does. And that is what Jordan Peterson does. That anxiety that you're feeling, that alienation you're feeling, whatever the other things that may contribute to it, I'm going to give you a very narrow target, a very simple target, a binary target for you to focus on. And that is, it's because women are not doing their job in society, which is to essentially make sure that the men have enough sex to be happy. Here is Jordan Peterson.
Jesus Christ.
Back. I mean, that's basically what he's saying.
Literally, right? That is Essence's message. I know.
That's his message.
I know.
And anything...
It's social reproduction.
It's just funny the way it gets when you spell it out.
And anything that in any way inhibits that delivery of the sex, or in any way that inhibits the hierarchy that had been established in Jordan Peterson's mind for perfectly legitimate reasons. Immutable reasons.
Right. That's all of a sudden where science comes in.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff is believe in dragons literally. But when it comes to enforced monogamy, that's science.
Right. And here he is. This is a deep cut of Jordan Peterson back in 2011 when he still thought that maybe the way for him to break through, he hadn't quite figured out that the key to breaking through is to say something that is like overtly controversial and made up. Instead, what he thought at this time was to dress as a gangster on TV and wear.
Wait, isn't this outfit some type of? I could be wrong. I thought this is some type of alt-right, like neckbeard outfit, right? Like,
well, it's a fedora thing.
It's the fedora thing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
all right, it's as simple as that.
They're not wearing it ironically. They actually think fedoras look cool.
This is This is.
Yeah, he looks very cool.
Oh my God!
And here he is. He is on filling in for Steve Paikin. I don't know. This is on CBC. Filling in for the agenda with Steve Paikin, or he's doing like a little quick hit. And here is his lament that men and boys aren't allowed to be boys and men anymore. Now, he's not quite explicitly saying, like, we don't have the privilege we used to have as men. I don't know about where he lives in Canada, but you could also say the same thing in certain parts of this country, in many parts of this country anyways, about white people not having the same privilege or rights that they used to have. Where, like, they couldn't be, now black people feel they can just come up and talk to you. But in my day, you couldn't get away with that type of thing. But here he is, lamenting on what men have lost.
Here's a thought. What if 2 decades down the road, women do all the work, all the engineering, all the ditch digging and firefighting, and raise the children too? It's not impossible. Such a state is already normal in several American subcommunities, hard hit by the economic demise of modern man. What if it took centuries of cultural...
Pause it. I just want you to just like marinate on that. Now, what he is talking about, there are communities where single mothers have to work, subcommunities. Sub-communities of America. Okay.
What if it took centuries of cultural discipline to produce 50s dad? What if the husband willing to stick around and share his income was the historical exception? It's a demanding job to support a family, after all, and it's not necessary to stay with one woman. Maybe men just won't do it unless they are provided with status to bolster their fragile male egos or to encourage desirable behavior. Without respect, why would they try when the alternative is so much easier and subtly promoted? Increasingly among my students, I see young men who don't know how to be good men. My son wasn't allowed to throw a snowball, for example, in elementary school. It was against the rules for him to even pick up snow off the ground. It is in that manner that decent boys are made to feel guilty about their masculine impulses. So they withdraw, confused. The more aggressive, psychopathic boys, they simply don't care. So they'll be the ones fathering your grandchildren in the future, if tomorrow's woman can find a man to sleep with at all. That'll keep the testosterone flowing. For The Agenda with Steve Paikin, I'm Jordan Peterson.
So wait,
Wow.
Don't make me unleash my testosterone.
I just
wait a second,
imagine
is he-
everything he's saying when he's wearing that outfit in like a 30s gangster accent.
Yeah, see, you're.
Oh, that's way too masculine for that.
But
That's
the
some whiny
idea.
bitch
Hold on.
shit.
I want to just instead of I want it. It's second order to mock his clothing here for a moment. The idea
Sometimes first
that
is
by
second.
not letting the children throw snowballs. Now, I don't know if he's talking about at recess or what, at people who presumably don't want snowballs thrown at them. The idea that by not letting boys or children, just broadly speaking, I guess women, girls don't have an impetus to throw a snowball, although someone should tell my daughter that. But
She's a sociopath.
but just to outlaw snowball throwing by boys in elementary school is somehow eliminationist rhetoric or practice. That you're going to literally annihilate a generation of men who are not going to be able to sire children because they can't throw snowballs while at school is slightly overblown. But if you are a kid who wanted to throw snowballs and you are probably 10 years out from that and you go like, you know what? He's right, man. When I was 11 or 10, I wanted to throw snowballs in elementary school. They wouldn't let me. And that's right. The problem is women aren't having sex with me.
That's why I haven't got laid.
Can't throw snowballs, then you get no blowjobs.
Well,
But that
it's
kinda-
crazy.
Yeah, go
He
ahead.
sidles right up next to like an actual historical materialist analysis in this, right? Like he's able to pinpoint when things change and how things change, but not why. Like he doesn't realize that the family wage was a historical anomaly in the middle of the 20th century. Oh, it must have just been the men's generosity of spirit is what changed.
Right.
No, I think he kind of does. That's why he says socially enforced monogamy. The other thing that's weird, I mean, he's basically a right-wing postmodernist. He basically says that these are constructed institutions and they've been constructed for a good reason and we need to maintain those hierarchies. That's one of the things that he's always saying. But I just want to make a point about this snowball thing because it's the perfect example. Someone like me, if I just heard that top line, I think, you know what? He's probably right. Like, let kids have a snowball fight. But the more to the point, and I want to be careful. A story was told to me recently of a woman who she was in first grade, and a boy beamed her hand with an ice ball. It broke her finger, and he got in trouble, whatever. But it was resolved that essentially, like, he has a crush on you. You guys need to talk it out. He'll get some reprimands, but
Are they still
there was a
doing
way
that?
in which, well, this is 10, 15 years ago, but still pretty recently.
fucked.
It was basically resolved, and a major part of the excuse making and normalization of him breaking her finger was he has a crush on you. So, like, that is the type of thing that they're addressing, Jordan Peterson. not kids being rambunctious and having fun. Like, I just think even examples like that sounds like, yeah, who wants to be uptight about kids having a snowball fight? That sounds stupid. But maybe they're addressing like a really serious and really sick, a disgusting response to like
there's
actually a
definitely
real
an
issue,
element,
right?
Yeah.
There's definitely an element to all of this that is like, there's a school in Wisconsin
Yes.
that got rid
Yes.
of Silent Night in their
Yes.
singing of Silent Night or whatever it was, or they didn't mention Jesus, and and this is indicative of. Yeah, you can argue that, hey, let kids have snowball fights. Although, yeah, that kid lost an eye, and so for liability purposes, the school doesn't do it anymore. Is
Or that
not.
the story
But
behind it was the
even-
girl had her finger
Right.
broken, and we realized
Right.
that has a crush on her is not good anymore. So
Well,
we're just
that-
reforming some things.
But clearly, not just boys are not allowed to throw snowballs. And even if the reasons why they're not allowed to throw snowballs are insufficient, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't, we don't know the specific case, that doesn't mean that we are eliminating an entire generation of potential men in the future. Men are going to have to develop so that they can actually, function without having to inflict their aggression on people.
Without having to think about other people as people in the world.
Exactly.
As if he has a crush on you makes it okay. Like,
Well,
I had a
that's the
similar
point.
situation in my young teenhood. And like, that was the answer that I was given when I tried to tell an adult about it. And like, it's like, oh, great. So there's like some weird sexual, psychological weird bullshit going on with this also just straight up abuse that I'm suffering. That makes it better.
Well,
Right.
you could argue though that, listen, that's
Boys
just,
will be boys.
Boys will be boys. That they used to take the club and knock the women over the head and then drag them away by the hair. That was just, they had a crush.
Without having to do that anymore, Cronus Magnus can't get his dates.
You know what,
with
I-
the club anymore.
I can't stop thinking about how this is sort of cyclical, and like this is
Yeah.
basically the same preoccupations that Teddy Roosevelt had when he decided he needed to go on
That's
like
why
a
he
North
was-
Dakota dude ranch
to go
for
hunting
so
and
long.
stuff, right?
And
'Cause
if
he
I
grew
was
up soft.
If I
Yeah.
actually was concerned about males going soft, I would be very worried that like this current crop is people like Jordan Peterson and not like Teddy Roosevelt.
Well, yeah, they're making. Yeah, no kidding. Well, also, I just don't. They brush up against. I bet you could have a bunch of conversations about how you design the school day and things like that for every kid that is like has too much energy for sitting around all day. You could have a conversation, by the way, about overprescription of Ritalin and also how that's very class and racialized. It is really sick that even when they brush up against legitimate things, they always just torque it to misogyny. That's like the only move. And that's quite intentional, obviously.
This just popped into my head, but it is really interesting how his affect is so diametrically opposed to the things that he's saying. And maybe he's still providing that emotional side in his affect in addition to the, I need to
That's how he's different than people.
I need to
like
work this
Limbaugh.
idea
'Cause
out,
He's,
but-
he's very different.
I like the
style.
development of his sartorial choices. Have now, like, he was at one point doing like the 1920s. That to me was the 1920s gangster reminiscent look, right, with the fedora and the shiny tie and sort of like he's wearing flappers. Maybe you can't see because it's a. But now he's wearing.
Swingers really brought that look
and there-
back.
Oh, that's
There-
a big improvement.
Is there any situation where you are actually normally like posed in that way that you've got him up there on that picture where he's holding the door? Like, is that a like?
That's how I enter my apartment.
But no. What he does now is he wears the 3-piece suits. He's still doing a little bit of throwback. But he's not doing the sort of the gangster look.
That was
there.
in the New York Times column, though, right? They talked about how some of his word choices are consciously throwback.
Yeah. That's,
He's relatively transparent about that part of it.
So sidebar, I